children don't learn based off of what you say. They learn based off of what they see you do. You can tell them till you're blue in the face, come talk to me. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I'll still love you. If their whole experience in their younger years was it wasn't safe to do that, they're not going to. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Through the Mirror. Now, a couple weeks ago, we did an episode on self-confidence, and there was a little part in that episode, and we actually made a clip of it, posted it, where Andrea was talking about parents not making their adult problems their kids' problems and protecting their own self-confidence. And, that kind of, particularly on TikTok, sparked a big debate on parenting. So, in lieu of that, wanted to talk about parenting and what that kind of stuff looks like. And first, Andrea, since you were the one that was talking about it on the clip, is anything you wanted to first hit on?
I would just say that what was talked about in the clip was not what was projected into that comment feed, which I found interesting. It's kind of like if you're kind of too triggered to see what's being said, you create something in your head that isn't being said, and then you tell everybody. That would be the definition of that comment feed. It was really strange. Talking about how adults need to take responsibility for their emotions and their problems and not view them and let them out on their children because the children deserve to have a childhood became this big debate on if you don't teach them, the world will, was one of the comments. And I'm thinking, so you want to traumatize your child and then let the world traumatize them? There's just so many comments on there. I was just like mind blown, and it just kind of projected either someone's childhood or someone's parenting. In either case, it's kind of sad because that kind of tells me you might be treating your children that way, or you are not emotionally aware or even mature enough to see that a child isn't responsible for you as an adult.
I noticed a common theme with how everybody was twisting what we talked about or what you were saying in that clip. And it was all about readying, like you were hurting children by not readying them for what the reality of how hard life was going to be when they're adults.
Okay.
And they pretty much were saying you were lying to your children. And it was better just to tell them when they're kids, prepare them for how horrible life is. Um, I just think that's so twisted because how are you, if you're saying an adult isn't, who doesn't know how bad the world is, isn't going to be able to handle that harsh reality, but you're telling me a kid is somehow going to be able to handle that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Children can't perceive the world like that. And again, that's like you had said, that's essentially you're taking away their childhood by making adult problems their problems when that's not theirs to bear and to carry. And I think people really need to start waking up and realizing just because as a parent you might have had a traumatic experience either as a child or as an adult that you didn't know how to handle or couldn't handle doesn't mean you put that trauma on your child who hasn't had that experience.
I think it's further than that. I think I posted about this a while ago, but it's like the roles were reversed where adults are excused to act like children more so now, and then children are expected to be more mature like an adult. And I think that's causing a lot of dysfunction in society. And by no means am I saying like your kid can't grow up and be in a hard situation in life. I mean, there's people that grow up in third world countries and they see starvation and they see all kinds of stuff as children, but I would say, like, even in Eastern cultures, their parents understand to be emotionally supportive and present and value what matters most in a lot of these cultures where people are like, oh, they live to be like 100 and stuff. And, you go through the studies, and a lot of it is there is like they come here. I think it was, what's his name? My brain. Osho. I saw one of his interviews, and he was talking about he came over here and he's like, why is everybody always talking about stress, like stress management? And he's like, over there, nobody's thinking about stress management because they don't have time to think about it, or they're living life and they're just focused on life. And I think here in our society, we have so many distractions and such a consumerist mentality that we actually have time to make problems for ourselves and create these dysfunctional situations in our children because we don't focus on life. Like if you grew up in a family, maybe you grew up on ramen noodles like I did sometimes and stuff, having a present parent in that, you go, it's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. We're all gonna work together as a family. Or you have a parent telling you about every single adult thing wrong instead of trying to go, okay, this is how it is. Let's make the best of it together. And you don't need to know about my stress and my anger and what's going on financially. Let's just keep this at a 5-year-old's level, right? Or even just if you have dysfunction in your family, like you don't need to sit there and talk about your issues with other adults in the family to your little children. That's just not fair to them. They don't need to be involved in that. And like on this post, it was like everybody took it to this weird extreme. This is why this generation's soft and all these stupid comments where it's like, actually, I think this is why a lot of this generation is struggling because people didn't make sure their children were treated like children. I don't mean like, you hear, oh, you're stupid, kids are stupid. No, like I'm to protect your innocence. I'm to protect your emotions. I'm to be here for you. I'm to be strong for you no matter what's going on in my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's parents don't seem to understand that if you just teach a child how to manage their own little internal world, whether that be when their toy breaks or their pet goes missing or something like that, something to a child that is like that is super traumatic to a child because
Yeah.
they don't have the same perception as an adult that that toy isn't that big of a deal in the long
Well,
run.
it's
To
kind of
them, that's their big thing.
like our son Xander. If his truck broke, is the equivalent to an adult losing their $400 in their wallet in the store. The panic
Right.
is the same, right? Like
Right,
oh
right. So
my gosh.
that's what I'm saying. Like a parent will automatically write it off and be like, because they know it's not that big of a deal, they automatically perceive, well, my kid needs to just understand that that's not a big deal. And at the same time, they don't realize that first, you're totally invalidating your kid's emotions in the situations and feelings that something important to them is broken or was they've lost something. So on top of being invalidated, they're never being taught how to actually deal with losing something.
Yes,
So
and then in those moments,
that translates to an adult if they lose a job or lose somebody in their life or they lose their house or something bad happens. They never learned how to handle that as a child. It's the same thing on how to handle it. It's just that disconnect, and I think Mr. Rogers said it so well. If there's anybody younger than us listening to this, they have no idea who I'm talking about. But if you look it up, Mr. Rogers, he had such a passion for children. And it was Oprah asked him what was the main thing, that piece of advice that Mr. Rogers could give parents. And he said, don't try not to forget what it was like to be a child. And I think parents forget what it was like to actually be a child and see the world through a child's eyes, and how everything that we think is so small is everything in their world. Everything from that conversation you have while driving in the car on, hey, how does the world work in this way? And that little question that you think it was just a little conversation that didn't matter much could have set your child on a path for something huge and really drastically affected them in a positive or a negative way. But when it comes to teaching a child how to handle those tough moments, it's how do I need to handle tough moments as an adult right now? Not telling my child, hey, it's not that big of a deal for these reasons. It's just a toy. I can go get you another toy. Or it's just a toy. There'll always be more toys. Don't worry about it, and teach them to just dismiss it altogether.
I think it's even, I'm not saying that in that moment you let your kid lose it either. I don't want to like say that's the case. Like if your kid's sitting there throwing a hissy fit, you need to teach them how to handle that and also set a boundary. Like, I think there's a few times where Xander, our third kid, he, gets told he can't do something or something happens and it's automatic. He's going to start, going ballistic a little bit. And it's like, you're not going to sit there and go, oh, it's okay, honey, that you're just being like reactive and mean to someone because something didn't go your way. I think that needs addressed. And then that moment you can go, hey, in a calm way as a parent and leading by example. Hey, this isn't acceptable. Let's sit down and chill and talk about this, but you're not going to learn that because something goes wrong. you can lash out and not consider others. I think that's important too, especially when you have a lot of the gentle parenting groups. And I know that's been a broad spectrum term now, where you're not
Right.
teaching your children healthy boundaries. And I'm no way supporting that or proposing that, because then you raise entitled children too. And both of these extremes go in terrible directions. You don't need a pendulum going from one end to the other. You need balance. So I think when it comes to children, though, you need to treat them like children and treat them how you want to be treated, not like they're just stupid little, humans. And all the comments I hear all the time, where I kind of sit back and just listen, because there's not a lot I can say in certain circles where I'm like, why would you talk about your child that way? Like, that's actually really mean. And that's your child. Like, I would never talk about my child that way. And I think it's just so normalized, and we don't think, or we grew up in that, so it's okay. But it's just a totally different perception. And I'm not claiming to be an expert here. Raising my 4 kids, we are together. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned while you're raising your children, when you can sit there and look at yourself and go, okay, how do I want to be treated in this? And am I considering them in this? Or am I inconvenienced or annoyed right now, and I'm reacting out of that space, which in turn is immature and childish? You can't expect a child to grow while you act like a child to them.
Right. And I think a really important piece in all this, you mentioned you don't just let your child spiral and act out and lash out in situations, but being able to decipher and recognize when your child is having a hard time processing
Mhm.
what they're feeling and experiencing, and when they're again lashing out or spiraling and being controlled by and overwhelmed with everything they're feeling, and they need a course correction. That's part of you can't just control your child out of the expectations of I want you to act the way I want you to act at any given time,
Mhm.
and you're not, and you can't falter on this, or you're just a bad kid. But obviously there's a difference. Like we're talking about, a broken toy is an example. There's a difference between a child sitting there and genuinely just being heartbroken,
Mhm.
crying, bawling their eyes out. This was my toy. This was important to me, and sitting there throwing it on the floor, throwing a fit,
Mhm.
kicking and screaming that my toy broke. And obviously, those are two different situations that you need to handle in two different ways with your child. But being able to recognize, and I think that's one of the hardest things parents have, because in those moments when your child is experiencing that, a lot of times you're having one of two things going on in your own world too. It's, well, I'm having a long day. I'm already at my wit's
Mhm.
end. I'm tired. I feel emotionally taxed out already. So you're already fighting your own internal, you know,
Mhm.
battle, and you're questioning yourself. And that's really hard as a parent to find yourself in a situation when you're questioning what's the best way to handle the
Mhm.
situation. Am I responding to the situation and being present and aware of what my child needs in this moment, or am I reacting as
Mhm.
well
Mhm.
and reacting while trying to teach my child how not to react negatively to a situation?
Yeah.
So you're like, it's really easy to get in your own mind like, oh my gosh, can I even handle this right now? And
Mhm.
I think that's a very common problem or struggle that parents are having, because, especially in the younger generation that are, now becoming parents, I see a lot of people, pretty much saying, I'm not making the same mistakes that, I saw, whether in my parents or my grandparents. Do I want to do things differently? But I'm not sure how, and I'm also dealing with my own crap on the
Mhm.
side as well, how to navigate that.
And I would say I've helped a lot of moms over the years, because, I became a mom and realized how much I did get passed down to me from my family in areas that was fantastic. And then in other areas where I didn't know anything. Like, for example, our firstborn, Xavier, he had a tongue tie, and I knew nothing about, adjusting the fascia, just having someone help teach me how to nurse in that situation the right way, to where, I had bloody nipples for a month, and we both were not having a good time. I pushed through that and thankfully could breastfeed, but that was like horrible. And then I researched it, dug into it, and it's like, oh, I'm going to talk about this, because I want to help other moms that might end up here and maybe don't have to have, bloody nipples for 2 months and a screaming baby a lot. So, and one of the things I've written on was imagine being a newborn baby. And it's the same as being a parent, same in every stage of life. You're imagine being a newborn baby. You come out of the womb and you're hungry for the first time and you're crying for the first time and you're cold and oh, what is that on my butt? Like, and I guess when I had our babies, I would think about that every time I felt tired and kind of frustrated and, I was awake for 5 days after I gave birth. I would think, yeah, I have it hard, but at least I understand what's going on. This little one is going, I am defenseless. I have no clue what's going on, but I know this person is the only thing that's keeping me safe. And that's all I know. And I think that's kind of never ends, right? If you have that awareness with your children, it doesn't just happen when they're infants, it happens through their whole lives. So, in a situation where I might feel tired, stressed, having my own stuff going on, I'm going to stop and go, okay, this kid is 4 years old and I'm 30 something. I think I'm going to make sure I consider that he's 4 years old and I got 30 something years of experience here. So let me think about how I'm going to respond. And if I don't know what to do, I'm going to go in and consider what I would have wanted at 4 years old and what I would have needed. Because now that you're an adult, not everybody has this, but I remember everything as a child. So I'm going to go into this experience with my children, understanding that they don't understand and they don't comprehend this. And I'm not going to put them down for that. I'm going to find a way to help them navigate it. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to show them that, hey, this is the foundation I'm setting for your life, and I want it to be a good one. And don't get me wrong, we're all going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But I don't think you're going to repeat patterns as a parent if you're actually conscious and you're actually making strides to do better. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day. The people that don't change, and people that say, well, this is how my family always did it, and they just have this very rigid, like, I can do no wrong and I'm not going to need to change. You're blind already and you're probably going to make a lot more mistakes as a parent, or maybe you may do unintentionally wrong things to your child because you don't have any awareness and you're not going to change things that need addressed in the situation.
Absolutely. I think one of the main things that helped me in that awareness with our children was just recognizing that when you're, and this is outside of, oh, I'm already having a day, I'm maxed and stressed out, but when you find yourself actually being triggered by your kids, which is going to happen, it's going to happen could happen on a somewhat semi-frequent basis, but when you actually find yourself getting triggered by your children, a lot of times that is actually an invitation to recognize that, hey, there was something that I was lacking from my childhood, and that's why this is triggering me. And you have an opportunity to be for your child what you needed. And that's actually can be very healing for both of you, for you, and then you're also giving your child what your child needs in that moment. But that is kind of that anchor. And for me, and one of my favorite movies is Inception. And in that movie, when you're in that dreamlike state, there was music that would be playing and be playing in the background, and it'd be like it would snap the people out of, oh yeah, I'm in a dream, something's about to happen. That whole thing of I'm triggered and this is an invitation
Mhm.
to change a pattern. To me, that's that music in the background for me in a situation where I get to be for my kid what I needed as a kid and change that. That was a real game changer for me. And I think that can really help a lot of other parents as well. Because, I mean, if you go down to the science of being triggered, it's an overwhelming emotional and full body sensation when you're triggered. And a lot of it, it's a reaction. There's no thought in it. It's just a boom, I'm reacting to this because I'm triggered. And
Mhm.
anything to break that cycle, any interruption in that, which is why there's so many things that people recommend with, letting your breath be your first word, just taking a
Mhm.
breath, even if you have to take a step away and be like, I'm going to return to this in 2 minutes, and that doesn't always work depending on the situation, but
Yeah.
just there's so many little things that can help just snap you out of whatever's going on because your kids are watching
Mhm.
every little thing that you do, even your how you're carrying yourself, every little glance, how you're breathing. They are watching you on such a level that parents don't even recognize how closely Your
Mhm.
children are watching you and how you respond to situations. So if you're handling it poorly and if you're just reacting out of your triggers and out of your past, that's what they're going off of. That's what they're going. So when I feel this way, this is how I react to it.
Mhm.
And then you have teenagers, young adults,
Mhm.
and parents wondering why their children, why their teenagers are so reactive whenever they don't like something or something
Mhm.
pokes them the wrong way. And I don't understand why why they act like that. And they watched it, so that's a learned behavior.
Yeah. I would say even back to triggers though, like when you're in that moment with your children, that doesn't mean you respond out of your triggers to like do better in the situation out of the past. Because that's also a trap. Like you can sit there and go, oh, and you're in a situation with your kids, maybe that you may have experienced in a negative way, and you can accidentally project that onto your kid while thinking you're protecting them. And that's not necessarily addressing your trigger, that's you working from the past. So it's more so if you recognize something in yourself, yes, address it, but don't make decisions based on what happened to you or the past, because then you can end up while you think you're doing the best for your kids, you're navigating out of pain. And a lot of good things can get destroyed when you navigate out of pain, out of past, out of trauma, whatever it is, because you're not navigating from the present. And now you're using a blueprint that's actually damaging. There's one thing to take things from the past as wisdom, but it's another thing to do things from the past because, oh, well, because I was abused as a child, like sexually, for example, I'm going to make sure that I'm hyper vigilant and always making sure that this and this and that. And then in the long run, you're going to box your child in based on your trauma and you're not going to live present and teach them healthy boundaries the right way. I've seen parents where they're giving their kids that are 6 and 7 very detailed, explicit things told to them that they have no business knowing and they have no way to understand. You can tell your kid, "Hey, nobody touches you." You can do cute little songs about it like we do with our kids, but you don't need to tell them what that is to keep them safe. You don't need to destroy their childhood. Now, don't get me wrong, bad stuff happens, things out of your control. Then you address that in the moment to the best of your ability, still treating that child like a child. You don't sit there and give them a full education on like rape, for example. You would never do that. And some people do. And it's like you are going to warp something, even if that never happened to them. You now just made something in their brain that they can't process. And now they're going to carry it and they're going to be super self conscious, maybe even insecure, or it's going to open that curiosity. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys are like, oh, the reason I got into porn is my parents hyper fixated on if I looked at a magazine or not. So then the more they made that like this big deal, the more I hyper fixated on it because instead of treating the situation like, oh, yeah, that's just a lady in a bikini. Yeah, let's go over here. And like, that very parental, like, look away, let's go over here, no big deal. It's just the human body. Let's not sexualize it.
Hmm?
You created the problem you were trying to avoid by projecting your trauma onto your child.
Yeah, no, that's a really that's a really big part of it. And you see this in other cultures, especially in, as you get closer to the equator and very high. I mean, it's you have whether it be Africa and stuff, there's tribes out there where there's very little clothing worn and it's not
It's extremely
sexualized.
hot out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not sexualized. You have women completely topless and,
Nursing their babies while
yeah,
walking around with wood on their head.
right, but breasts are it's like that's what it's for. It's like they look at it the same as if you see, any other mammal
Mhm.
feeding the child. It's not a sexualized thing like that. So people, and this is a really hard thing for parents to grasp. You brought up like even rape. You're not going to
Mhm.
tell are you not going to talk to a 10-year-old about rape and explain rape because maybe something bad happened to you or you don't want something bad happening to your kid? If it's something horrible like that happened to your kid, and what's going to hurt your child the most actually isn't that act, as horrible as it is. What would hurt your child the most is your child being all alone with what happened to them and having nobody, not having parents to be able to sit there and process it with and
Mhm.
navigate it with. That's where a lot of the problems, and it seems like so many people are fixated on, and this isn't just with children, this is in life in general, but,
Mhm.
focus on the children aspect of it, of trying to navigate life from a place of, well, I'm just going to try my best to prevent any bad thing from ever happening, period. And that's the fixation. That's the hyperfixation, is we're just going to stop bad things from happening. And reality is bad things are going to happen. There's evil people out there, and that's just it's just the truth of it. How are we going to handle it? How are we going to process it and then heal from it? How are we going to support each other through bad things, whether that be loved ones passing away, you know, natural disasters, whatever the case may be? Sitting there and going into detail of the trauma, the bad thing, isn't going to safeguard your kid if anything bad happens. It's
Mhm.
just going to make them aware of bad stuff that they don't need to be hyperfixated on, like you said. And what was it? It was Dr. Gabor Mate had a wonderful interview with Mel Robbins about, how she was abused at a camp
Mhm.
by a male, and she talked about it. It was a really traumatic experience, and he just asked her a simple question: well, who did you talk to about it? Did you talk to your mom? And she was like, no, I didn't talk to anybody about it. And he was just like, well, that was the trauma, not the event. The event was horrible, but it was trauma is that you were alone with it all.
Mhm.
Parents need to realize that it's about really connecting with your child, really letting them know that no matter what's happening, no matter if they mess up, if they make a mistake, no matter what, you are there, you love them, you're going to support them, and make that the focus, not just trying to navigate life and try and prevent bad things from happening, because they're going to happen.
Mhm. And I would say too, being a present parent gives you kind of a proactive stance in these bad things that can happen. Because if you're present, you're going to be very aware of your surroundings with your child. You're going to be very aware of the people you leave them with if you have to. You're going to be very conscious as a parent. So it does provide an extra amount of safety. Is it guaranteed? Absolutely not. Not life in itself is not guaranteed. And I actually didn't tell you this today. So when I was coming home from the I pulled up by the abortion clinic and there was a protest outside. And then we sat there for like 3 minutes at the light. So Xavier was sitting there watching and I could see him and he was just like, and he turns around and goes, Mommy, what are they doing? Why do they have signs? I was like, well, they're protesting what they believe is wrong in a situation in regards to that building. Oh, like what? I was like, oh, I said, it's nothing you need to worry about right now. That's their right, though. You have freedom of speech. And if you want to protest, you can, if you're pro or anti something, as long as you're peaceful and kind. I didn't tell him they were protesting abortion. I didn't even describe to him what abortion was. I don't think my 8-year-old needs to know that people abort babies. I don't think he needs to understand that. But in that moment, I didn't lie to him. I just didn't give him details that are not needed at 8 years old. So why he learned a lesson. He learned that about protesting. He learned about, why they were holding signs and they want to be heard. I used it as a teachable moment, but he did not have to know anything more than that. So when people go, oh, you just don't want to teach your child everything, this is no, you can teach your children in every situation, but you can still protect them. My kids don't need to know anything about that. They don't need to know the politics of it. They don't need to know the right and wrong in it. They don't need that debate. None of that should be coming up in that situation at his age at all.
And even for, let's say the side is it that is abortion is a immoral and wrong thing. You don't have to talk about how, oh, that's an abortion clinic and people are murdering their babies and all this to a child to explain to them the value of life or the value of an unborn child as well. Like you don't even have to go down the morbid side to make your child understand that, or in the other side, or in the opposite side of saying, well, what you want to do with your own body is your choice, or whatever. Nobody has to go down and make what would be an adult argument, an adult debate, or a political thing a child's problem.
No, and I don't think even in that discussion, I've seen people where they're telling their children what they believe about abortion, and they're getting them at a young age to make decisions they can't make and to hate each other on each side. And it doesn't matter because none of that is for them to even worry about. I don't agree with anyone hating each other. I don't care what's going on. That whole entire, I guess, debate and back and forth in politics isn't about saving human lives or helping mother anything. It's all vile. on both sides. It's used for a purpose. So like in all spectrum though, just think about how that conversation went, where it could have went, but instead I went, this is an 8-year-old boy. I'm not going to even go anywhere near that. He doesn't need to know that. And that's being a present parent. That's making good decisions to protect your child's childhood. Now he knows about protesting. What a great homeschool lesson. He got to see 20 people protesting and ask questions. Why protecting his childhood? That's all. That's a perfect example. I forgot to tell you about it today because I was like, all the kids are sleeping. But of course, Xavier, he's over there like, what's going on, Mom? There's people over here. And I'm like, oh, of course.
No, and that's such a good example because if you're operating from either your own trauma or your own reaction, then that's how you could miss something like that and then
Mhm.
project your own problems onto a child.
Or your
Is
beliefs.
easy or your beliefs just like that. But even and like I said, even if you're wanting to, coach your child on what you believe is right between right and wrong, it doesn't have to be in a way that is going to damage or make again expose them to stuff that they're not even capable of processing or understanding,
Mhm.
and it's just going to do more damage than good. Like there's other ways that you teach your child, but yeah, that's just such a good example of how you being a present parent, you're either going to be projecting your own stuff onto your child, or you're going to have come from a place of awareness, be like, oh, just exactly what you did and how you handled the situation.
And I mean, there's we could go off a huge list of these examples, but yeah, as a parent, you need to decide how you're going to go about everything. It doesn't mean overthink and wring your hands. It's just taking every moment of a time and doing your own inner work and working on yourself and owning up to your mistakes. If you make a mistake with your child, own it. Don't sit there and pretend it didn't happen. God forbid we tell our kids sorry, right? It's kind of a bad habit in today's society. It's like you can apologize when you're wrong and show your kid that you own up to your mistakes
Mhm.
and that you're not perfect. Does that mean you act like an idiot and abuse your kids and go, I'm not perfect? Absolutely not. There's just no excuse for that. And if you have done that and you change, awesome. If you are doing that, you need to stop. It's so selfish. And we need more of that. We need more real conversations in this. And I think a lot of people in our age group and younger are sitting here confused because they're like, okay, there's a lot of good things from my life and my parents, or I didn't have a parent. I know many people that didn't even have parents, or their parents were alcoholics or gone all the time, or they were in split families and just really terrible, unbelievable situations where there's times where I'm listening like, wow, okay. But that doesn't mean you're also going to have to repeat that with your children. You have an opportunity to go, you know what? I'm going to find a different way, no matter what, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And I would say that's being a present, conscious parent and teaching your kids not through your words, but through leadership, through taking ownership. So, yeah, we could talk about that one.
Well, there is a certain level. You will never be able to connect with your child past a certain level if all you are doing is projecting perfection to your kid. That you are perfect, that you never have to apologize for anything, or you always come up with some kind of excuse or reason for your mistakes to where you're portraying that you can do no wrong and that your child makes mistakes all the time. Automatically you're putting up a barrier with your between you and your child that you'll never be able to connect. You'll never be able to get through. They will never feel seen or understood through their own shortcomings because you have made it very clear that you don't have any like that in the moments that it
Mhm.
matters. And that comes with, like you said, taking accountability for your own mistakes with your children.
Mhm.
I mean, whether it be, you know what, I shouldn't have said that, I was stressed out and I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Or I handled that poorly. I shouldn't have done that. Something as simple as that. And children are the most forgiving and accepting. Like every time I've apologized for, saying something I shouldn't have or reacting emotionally in a situation, I look at our kids and I've apologized every time. It's okay. Yeah, yeah, you did that. And they're not stupid. Like adults think kids are so much, they don't give them credit for how intelligent and how aware they are of things. There have been times where I've apologized to our kids for something and they're like, "Yeah, I know you did that." Like I didn't even have to tell them for them to know what was going on.
Mhm.
But it was really important that they see that I take ownership of my own shortcomings or my mistakes with them And that is an invitation for when they mess up or they make a mistake that, you know what, I can, it's safe to own up for my mistakes. And my parent isn't going to treat me bad. I'm not lesser than in that way, and I can actually connect with my parent through the mistakes. There's a lot of I've heard a lot of parents struggle with connecting with their kids through, especially when you get into the teenage years when they really start, they're trying to figure out things and start walking into aspects of adulthood and the mistakes with that. And it's like, oh, I don't understand why my kid won't talk to me, my kid won't come to me and the stuff. And it's like they feel like they can't because there's that wall up where it's not safe to make mistakes. And like you said before, children don't learn based off of what you say. They learn
Mhm.
based off of what they see you do. So you can tell them till you're blue in the face, come talk to me. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I'll still love you. If their whole experience in their younger years was it wasn't safe to do that, they're not going to.
No, and
Eh,
I see a lot, like there's this one coach that I've talked to a few times online, and she deals with like reuniting parents with their kids and stuff because we're in the day and age where kids cut off their parents. And don't get me wrong, in cases of like abuse and stuff, it's actually absolutely warranted. But I'd say there's the pendulum swinging again, in it be it the parent or the child, but you can set boundaries and learn to have relationships with people. And boundaries are a doorway. Walls are walls, but boundaries give you a door. Here's a door, respect the boundaries, and you're welcome here. And I don't think enough people realize the benefit of doing that and the healthy relationships you can cultivate, even if you had, made mistakes as a mom or dad, or you've had these things going on, or I've had moms who are like, "Oh, I had a kid when I was a teenager. I never got to be his mom because I was a child and he got raised by someone else. And now I'm an older mother and he's a teenager and I get him back and well, everything is horrible." That's nothing in your control there. Like you're not a bad parent. That's just the way things happen. There's nothing you can do. You can't go in the past, but that doesn't mean you can't be a present, loving parent now, or you can't you know, reconnect with your family and have a healthy situation because you decided to do the work. And then if it's not healthy, I've had people who are like, oh, this one friend of mine years ago, she's like, oh, my dad like punched me in the face and stuff. Yeah, I'm not going back to that relationship. And if he hasn't changed, I don't think he should, because in that situation, nothing has changed. You're going to get more of the same. But we would have a lot less of this happening though if a parent was present and the parents did the work. And then their children, if they grew up in that, they're going to do the same thing back. You wouldn't have, in society, there's so much dysfunction in that regard. And even further, some of the boomer and exennial generations, like they don't want their kids to have real independence. There's always a string attached or something because they're holding on to their kids so tight that them having their own lives, their own families, that it's like a threat to them for them to go and do that. And it's an insult when really it's like, okay, you've lived your life. Now I have to live mine.
Yeah, and I see that I see that a lot. There's another aspect where if your if your child always feels like you're this perfect person, the perception is perfection and that's what to obtain, you really start to see, and we have seen that where there's always a lack, even in adulthood, where you're having issues with never feeling like you're good enough. And that can be, even if you, like you said, and there's a lot of kids or young adults completely cutting their parents off of stuff, but they're still walking through life with I'm not good enough, always trying to prove
Mhm.
themselves, always trying to achieve, because their whole persona of what it meant to be an adult was perfection. And a lot of that is a subconscious thing. It's a subconsciously how their parents perceive that on for their children is how they view what it means to be a, good adult. And it's really important to recognize that teaching your child that it is okay to make mistakes and to have integrity through that, because that'll go further than anything else. And that honestly, in a lot of ways, takes that like unrealistic burden off the shoulders of parents, because parents who really, really care about their children and don't want to repeat patterns and want to give everything they can for their kid in the best ways, recognizing that you're going to make mistakes, and it's just how you respond to those mistakes with your children just takes so much of that pressure off, because you don't have to be perfect and you're not going to be perfect. And
Mhm.
actually, it's kind of like it goes with the saying with the flower, if you try and hold it too tight, it's gonna wilt and die. If all you're doing is just trying to be perfect, be perfect, be perfect no matter what, you're going to end up doing a lot more damage to yourself and your child than if you just recognize, okay, I made a mistake there. What am I going to do now that I have? Am I going to try and cover it up and hide it and brush it on the rug? That didn't happen because that's not good. You can go even a step further and gaslight yourself and that wasn't the case, and try and, make it to where your kid doesn't perceive it as a mistake, which they will.
Or you blame your child for your mistakes.
Or even worse, the more abusive part is you blame your child for your shortcomings. And you're going to end up creating the same problem further down the road.
And I would say even another part of parenting that's super important, because in the day and age of food and toxins and everything, and the age of technology, your kids need time outside. They need good food. They need foods that are going to fuel them. Food as medicine. I can't help but say this as a naturopath. We have, we're the alpha generation and even the Zennials. It's like you can't have these kids being able to have, emotional stability and function right if they're sitting in front of a tablet or a screen for 10 hours a day. And unfortunately, that's become so normal. Like we go to restaurants and you'll see some kids and they're all like, they're sitting at their tablets and the parents are on the phone and nobody's connected. I mean, and for us, we don't go out to eat a lot. So when we go out to eat, it's like, oh, yes, such an experience. And we're just really engrossed in that. And I kind of like see that and I'm like, oh, that's kind of sad because nobody's connected at the table. And I'm not saying your kids can't have tablets and have fun and enjoy things, but I think parents, because either they don't know what to do, maybe they're single, they're stressed out, and they don't realize that every time you throw that tablet in front of your kid because you can't handle them, you're teaching them to cope, you're messing with their dopamine, and you have a potential to put them on track in life to be addicted to other things far worse. Or, I mean, I hate to say it, there's a lot to do with like video game addiction too now. You have all these kids that are growing up on, it's normal to play Fortnite for until 3 or 4 a.m. And then they're adults and that's their only reality outside of their responsibilities. And then they don't actually grow in life. They don't have time for real life because real life has become a fake reality.
Well, and the other part with the tablets with kids, especially in like restaurants and just in public or in airports and stuff, a lot of it also has to do with just keeping them quiet and behaved so they're not causing a disturbance or embarrassing the parents and stuff like that. And I think that's a social issue. Kids are going to act like kids. If kids cry, if kids are a little rowdy or, do whatever, like if you sit, and this again goes back to not thinking of your children as just like lesser. If you go to a restaurant, it's noisy because everybody's talking, people are laughing, but a kid gets a little loud, even if it's just as loud as
Mhm.
other people laughing across the restaurant. People kind of glare, like, control your kid. Why a kid can't have a good time, a kid can't express himself as a restaurant, like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
I have
Like,
to
they should
say,
normalize kids having a
yeah,
good time as well.
I just I just thought of this. You remember years ago when Octavia was a baby flying back from Florida, and I finally got her to sleep, and I think there was a storm, so the plane started rocking, and then some guy out of nowhere started sneezing. Like everyone was quiet and woke her up, and she was crying. I just remember feeling so seen and cared about on that plane by these people because that wasn't the reaction. They all looked at that guy like, "You did not just wake that baby up. It's not the
Right.
baby's fault. Like you did not just sneeze."
Right.
She because Octavia was upset. She's 5 months old, and this plane was tiny. We were in the back, and it was just like it was awful. Like I wanted to throw up, and we had like only an hour and a half flight, but I was like, oh man, it was like 11:30 at night, and she was done. Like I'm trying to nurse her, and Trey and me switched seats because I got sat in this really, really big fat guy, and I could not like nurse. It was just like there was no. It was like sitting like this. I have Octavia, so finally Trey switched with me, and she was throwing a fit. But people were just like, "Oh, it's okay. I would be throwing a fit too if I had a thunderstorm and I was on a plane. If I was a baby." And in that moment, I was like, "Oh, this is a different reaction," because most people are like, "Oh my God, there's a kid on the plane." And don't get me wrong, we've had so many people compliment the kids because they're so thrilled on the planes. Like this last time, they're looking out the window, they're laughing, they're saying hi to everyone walking down the aisle. It's great. They're great on planes. But I remember that being like oh, I've tried to get her to sleep and this guy sneezes. And as a parent, you're
Right.
like, I need to be calm right now. She's got a reason to cry. I want to cry right now. I want to throw up.
Right. Well, and that again, that goes where it's like become normal to separate the family dynamic where you have
Mhm.
adults and then you have children. And I see that again in talk about restaurants where it's like, okay, the kids need their tablets, their headphones. You guys be quiet down there. The adults are over here doing their thing. And you're like separating instead of having everybody connected together and your kids involved in the conversation and learning and connecting with you and seeing that you care and want them involved in your life as well. And a lot of and these are just little things that I think people don't even really think about or recognize that maybe that's one of the reasons why your child feels distant. Maybe that's just
Mhm.
one of the few things that is adding to the fact that you don't feel super close and connected the way you want to with your child because, for some reason we think just because we live with them and feed them meals that automatically just means you're going to be really close with them. I would argue in a lot of situations if people treated their adult best friend the same way they treat their children in some aspects, you wouldn't really be that close with your friend and you
Mhm.
wouldn't be surprised that you weren't close with that person.
Yeah.
Like if you just went out to go golfing with a guy, your best friend, and you didn't talk to him the whole time and you acted annoyed when he tried to talk to you or laugh or make a joke with you and you just wrote him off as annoying, probably wouldn't be very close with that person. Your children want to be involved in your world. They want to know what makes you tick. I'd argue your children could be the closest friends you'll ever have in your life because they are so interested in everything about you and they want that and they're asking for that connection with you. It's
Oh, and then
completely up to a parent on whether or not you have.
well, and I don't even think you need to even use the term friend because I think the parent-child bond has the potential to be something on its own. Because I mean, even friend,
Right.
like you're not going to sit there and talk to your 10-year-old like they're your best friend. I would say that's very selfish because if you have adult conversations, again, you're putting your adult stuff on your kid. So as adults, sure. Like, and this is a big disconnect too. When your child becomes an adult, you need to treat them like an adult with mutual respect. That they were your child, but now they're an adult and you kind of meet each other at the same respect. And I think that's also big misunderstanding in society, like talking to parents or children. It's like, okay, they're adults now, and whatever decisions they make now. I saw this weird post the other day, and it was something like, I failed as a parent if my kids don't make it to heaven. I thought, religion aside, let's just think about that. You cannot control one, when your child is grown enough to make their own decisions, it's on them. So to kind of like religion aside, attach yourself to that is so controlling, self-damaging, and a really, really extreme expectation. Like that's just one example. Your children are going to go out in the world and they're on their own now. Are you there? Can you be there and supportive and loving no matter where they are as long as you live? Absolutely. But after that, that's not in your control. You have no say over that. You have no say about their path in life. You have no say on what that is going to mutate to. You don't know if we had that scary situation on the highway today where that semi almost crushed us in that moment, it was horrible. It was like, man, we after we got out of that because you acted so quickly, it's like, man, that could have been the end of all of us. My parents didn't have control over that. We barely had it. I mean, that semi didn't see us, and he's going to crush us. And he had the car right here. That was scary. Am I thankful? I was like, oh, but that didn't happen. But in that moment, you're kind of hit with that could have been the end of everything. And our four kids are in the car, and there was nothing we could do beyond what we did and I'm really thankful that we're okay. But that was like see, you just don't know what's going to happen. You're just going to the store to get some groceries and your life flashed before your eyes. Could have been over just like that.
Well, and that goes to, trying to think you can control outcomes and what's going to happen. And like I hear people use a term all the time, well, you need to raise your children. I don't saying the term raising your children means you're attached to an outcome of what you expect your child to be as an
Mhm.
adult. And you're going to be disappointed. They're their own person. They're going to make their own decisions and find their own path in life, which you have the wonderful thing that you get to do is to help guide your child the best way you know how. Teach them, but guide them. There's no just like couldn't control that semi driver didn't check before swapping lanes and, almost hit us. I couldn't control that. But, you can't control, or even you can try to, but trying to control your child to reach a certain expectation that you have set in your own mind on what you want them to be as an adult is going to do more damage and cause more distance in the relationship because, I mean, there's a cheesy saying, do unto others that you have them do unto you. I mean, how would you react to people trying to control you in that manner? How did you react if your parents were trying to control you in that manner? It probably didn't go over so well, or
Mhm.
it made you feel very empty and alone because you felt like you actually were never really accepted for you. You were only accepted if you did what your parents wanted you to do. And if you did have that happen to you, I really doubt you want to have that with your child as well. And again, we talk about patterns a lot on this podcast. That's one of those things where you get the opportunity to not repeat that pattern,
Mhm.
regardless of what you think is best or how you perceive things, because they do have their own path and their own journey in life. And they're not going to perceive everything the same way that you do. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I would even put it on there too, like even when it comes, it doesn't matter if you believe in Christianity, Islam, or Hinduism, all these things. I don't think it's healthy either to sit there and focus on the end of your existence here. Like, why does that matter? That matters the day that I guess you move on to that existence. So stop. I guess I would say my advice would be don't be raising your children out of fear. Like, I don't care what it is, because almost every belief system has some form of it. It's like, how about you focus on living your life now in the best version of yourself every day? And kindness and compassion, empathy and integrity, and setting that. And that's what they're going, well, end of the day, as long as you end up in heaven,
Or
and
don't do that, or you're going to
we
wind up
could
in hell.
yeah, we could dive into that, but it's like, and from my upbringing, I believe the kingdom of heaven is within us, and I believe that heaven's not some mystical place in the sky that you're just gonna focus on. No, you're right now is where life is, and this is where you're at. Nothing else exists outside of this moment because either it's the past or you're attached to the future. So this moment is all that matters, and yeah, that's not easy to do. I can tell you that I still have a hard time sometimes going present. Like you go and think back to something bad that happened to you, and you find yourself, oh, oops, yeah, missing out on life right now. Because what am I doing? Oh, I'm getting teary eyed over something that already happened and I can do nothing about. And you got to be mindful of that. Snap out of it. Or you're sitting here going, well, Trey could lose his job in 3 years or this and that. And you're thinking of, and you're spending all of your time you could be reading a book with your child, focusing on the moment, worrying about something that could never happen and hasn't happened. So the same goes for this like belief systems too. Like, who cares? You're not there right now. And if you end up there and you won't know it's coming, like today, if we ended up squashed by a semi, I wasn't definitely thinking about what would happen next. It was just we're like, thankfully, you reacted to where we didn't get squashed by the semi because you stayed calm and we're like, yep, this is horrible. I'm going to put that aside right now. How can we get out of the situation and still end up okay? And which we barely did. But that's life. That's how you should focus on life. Because then if you're too busy worrying about the past and the future, something's going to hit you right in the face in the present and you're not going to see it coming. And your life is going to be a roller coaster. And we've all been there. We've all experienced it. None of us are perfect, but it's a great lesson to learn and to strive for every single day, no matter how many times you fall on your face.
Yeah, absolutely. There is one thing that you briefly started to touch on that I wanted to drive home a bit was, attaching to the end of your life. But one thing that is across a lot of different belief systems and is used is if you're you're going to hell if you do this, or you're going to hell if you do that, you're going to burn in a lake of fire, or this or that. There's
Mhm.
different ways and different belief systems on what that looks like. But I see that translate into parenting a lot, where it's always a focus on the consequence and never just about making good choices and decisions for a morality's sake, or this is what is
Mhm.
right versus wrong. It's always, well, you do this and there's a punishment. You don't do
Well,
this and there's a punishment. And
it's
there's
threatening.
this,
It's not teaching. That's threatening.
right.
You're teaching your
And well,
child to
that's
respond out of fear, not growth. That's not,
right.
I'm doing what you
Exactly.
say because I want to be the best version of myself. I'm doing what you say because I'm afraid. And
I'm
I used to,
afraid of what's
yeah,
going to happen to me if I don't do it. And I think a lot of people do this without even realizing it. Like
yeah, I don't think it's malicious
it's
thing
a
half the
deep
time. Some of the time it
and
is.
it's like a subconscious programming that's been and a lot of stuff's
Mhm.
been going on for generations. Generations and generations have been using a fear-based tactic to get the control or the what they just how they want their child to act. It's like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get my child to behave. So the what I'm going to start doing is fear-based tactics. You do this, this is going to happen to you. You don't listen, this is going to happen to you. Not, hey, that's not how we do things. This is why. There's a difference between using fear to try and control and get the behavior you want out of your child and having consequences and boundaries with certain behaviors. There's a
Mhm.
big difference between the two. One
Yeah.
is there's a difference between love and control, and I think that's maybe a conversation for a
Yeah. I
different
mean, we just had
episode.
an episode on manipulation, which is the definition of that topic. And I would
Yeah.
even like say, like, I've trained horses and I've ridden horses. I love horses. There was nothing more dangerous than a horse that only listened because you scared it good enough. And so I don't train horses this way, but some people hit their horses, like you see the race horses and stuff. And the day that that horse is not afraid of you because something else bothered it more, they're going to throw you into a tree and you might break some ribs or even get killed. People have gotten killed on horses because that horse never learned because you taught it and it respected you and trusted you. It was just afraid of you. And there is not a more dangerous way to train a horse. The same applies to human beings. The minute that the danger of you does not overcome the danger of something else, you wonder why people go on these like, oh, my teenager's going crazy. Well, it's because you no longer have control. And now they're going to seek control somewhere else. And this is the truth. I hear so many people where they're like, "Oh, it's the phones." And don't get me wrong, I don't think your child should have social media. Like you have people getting blown up in wars on there. Like your 13-year-old doesn't need to see that either. And then all the other exposure. But it's not the phones alone. It's not the device because this stuff has been going on for generations before technology, right? Sure, there's more challenges. Don't get me wrong. I think it's kind of insane. You got AI and all these distractions and video games, but it's you as the parent not being present, period. And that's an ownership we have to take. We got our kids a Switch years ago and we were like, they're only playing that like an hour or two on the weekend, and that is it. And I'm not saying that's the same for every parent, but we noticed when our kids played that more, even though it seemed moderately, they acted off. They seemed very, very edgy. And I really think it's the lights and the stimulation, and it's just too much for their developing brains. And I was like, yeah, no, we're shutting this down right now. Not because it's bad for them to have fun, but because we are like, this is going to hurt my kid. They're going to be a little bit mad at me for a bit, but then I'm not going to sit there and make them bored. I'm going to go, hey, let's go outside. Let's go to the library. Let's go find some friends. Let's get a kit and build something and keep them in that environment. And that again it's hard in this kind of lifestyles we have in this kind of world, at least in like in America, United States. But you have to make that decision because if you start noticing things with your kids, you need to act and not shame and guilt them and tell them they're bad or that, oh, yeah, we're taking this away because it's so bad. It's okay. I think you just need to do that a little bit, and that's enough. Let's
I
learn moderation and navigate this.
well, it's almost like it's kind of the same concept as even like a drug user where
Yeah.
you always have to are upping the dose to get the same effect when you're trying to, use that fear-based tactics to control your kid through, certain disciplinary actions. the older a child gets, then to your point, the more things that come up in their life that they might fear more, the more intense and the severity that you have to go to retain that control, and that can get out of hand very, very quickly to where, that's where things, especially in boys, between the father-son dynamic, where things start to get physical and testosterone gets involved, or, where, and this is where a lot of that stuff that kids will start cutting parents off for later on will start to come about, because you have to keep upping it and upping it to get the same
Yeah.
effect, and the kid never learned through that.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I think very, very good points. All this, I know
Yeah.
we're past our time here, but appreciate everybody tuning in this week. Now, Andrea, if there was anything else you wanted to end on.
No, got always lots to talk about.
Right. Well, we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, see you guys next time.